we're gonna give it like a minute or two for people to join and share and get suited for the space. It's gonna be very very exciting one. Something I personally have also been waiting for to do myself with Hugo and to talk about that this very topic specifically because in the very recent times this has been now more and more a topic in the XRP community. We have been seeing like various maybe platforms have been joining, but also people talking a bit more um, concrete and thinking about staking, yield, and all of these functionalities and opportunities in combination with XRP and the XRP ledger. And I think right now is a very, very good point in time to digest this, talk about it, and see what's out there. And specifically for you as a user who has, of course, funds at the line here to be safe. Yeah, to be safe, to ask the right questions, and then ultimately to make the decision whether you want to engage in various activities or not. That is the ultimate goal, to have that all in place, and for you that you better can differentiate between not only platforms but offerings, opportunities that come along, because that is something very very important. Specifically, I would say for the XRP community, because we historically haven't had a huge DeFi on-chain community or usage. Therefore, a lot of the learnings might be skipped over, and I would love that we could maybe fast track it without making the same mistakes, just to learn from other ecosystems and good learnings, that best practices, things that are maybe developed right now or being developed, things to look out for. That is very, very important, I believe, for us as in the XRP community. So that is the goal of today's space. I see a lot of people already joined. It's very fantastic. So yeah, I think we're gonna kick it off with that. With the long intro here, I invited, as I said here specifically, Hugo. I had with Hugo a conversation a couple of weeks, many weeks I think ago before, just to talk about the recent developments also on the XRP ledger, because this is where then these offerings came around, various projects, and I wanted to get a good understanding from someone who is in this field, building these things in a decentralized manner, what the thoughts are from his side. And yeah, we definitely said we should have a public discussion here with the community. With that being said, as I said, public discussion with the community. I know probably almost everybody who is in the audience. So if you want to participate, of course, in a really nice, cordial discussion, feel free to request. I'm gonna let you up if I know you and I know that you want to contribute to a good discussion. Feel free to request and join the conversation. This is us sitting together and talking about it. First, Hugo, thanks for joining with us here and participating in this. I really, really looking forward to this.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this. Um, in case there are some of your listeners that don't know, who I am, I'm Hugo, Hugo Fillion. I'm co-founder and CEO of Flare. Flare is blockchain for data. Data drives everything, and the way we handle data is through totally decentralized protocols, and using that data allows us to do really interesting things with other blockchains. And principally, we've been focusing on XRP for a very long time. And when I talk about data, could be market data, could be social media data, could be many types of data, but specifically the type of data that allows us to become interoperable with XRP is state data from the XRP ledger, of which Flare, I think, has the most sophisticated way of getting that data. And we can talk about how that data is used to allow you to essentially bridge XRP to Flare later.
It's a very fantastic intro here, and we have also Thanos. I think he's is a developer at Flare. Is that correct?
No, Trevor's our DeFi lead.
Perfect. Thanos, if you want to give just a few words to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. So my name is Thanos. I I lead kind of the DeFi and on-chain efforts here at Flare. So what I've predominantly been tasked with over the last 6 months has been building out our DeFi ecosystem in preparation for what we're building, which is our one-to-one bridge, which is F Assets, which we will launch on Flare, which gives you the ability to take XRP from the XRPL and then mint FXRP on Flare. And then from there, I've been thinking more broadly about what you can do with that FXRP downstream, and then working with specific dApps within our ecosystem to help prepare for what I think will be Flare's biggest launch yet.
That's that fantastic. I mean, that sets the stage for a really awesome conversation and discussion here. But before we jump in, I have to ask this, Hugo. How was your Q1 so far? I mean, if I look, in the past couple days, it's been very, very hectic in the crypto community, to say the least. But how's been Q1 so far for you, and how did you experience it personally?
Yeah, it's been really good actually. I mean, yeah, there's volatility, but I don't. If the market's doing something, the market will fix itself eventually. I appreciate that it's like really gut wrenching. It's gut wrenching for all of us to watch, all of the tokens just like absolutely have a bad day or a bad week. But we got to just be heads down. I didn't enter this space because I thought. You know, uh, I'm going to measure things over a 2 to 3 week time frame. I think it's absolutely straightforward that the future of finance and the future of many other things are going to be on chain. So ultimately, what happens in the 3 to 6 month period doesn't really interest me because we're building for the future. Um, and then, Q1's been a really good quarter for Flare. Our TVL has been solid. Interest developers has been very solid. The hackathon we did around verifiable AI with Google was really fantastic and has resulted in a number of a lot of interest in what we're building in AI, but also a number of new teams joining Flare to build products around AI. So it's been a great Q1.
Yeah, so for me, it was like specifically that. Yeah, the couple of months, I would say, the beginning of this year, where I heard a lot more about institutions now being very interested. I heard that, oh, look, retail is maybe more bearish, but look, institutions are so much bullish on this technology, and it was like this mismatch of retail not seeing it essentially, but institutions having so much interest in it and pushing into the space. Unfortunately, like me as a retail person, I don't have that connection or I would say conversations with these people. So I'm curious, did you get the same sentiment also from your side, high level, that there's a shift in that thinking? I just want to have a from you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's a lot of retail institutional interest, and I think there's a bigger mismatch, in where that institutional research, interest wants to go and what can actually be done on chain. And I think that's quite interesting. So, if you view blockchains as just rails for money, that's fine. It can be new rails. But fundamentally, I find that broadly an uninteresting concept. I think it's much more interesting is what you can do to bring institutions together in a way where they don't have to trust each other. One of the biggest issues of running a or working in a financial institution is you're very limited in the number of people you can transact with, and this is largely because you've got to onboard the people you transact with. You've got to KYC them, you've got to AML them, you've got to work with their systems. It's all very complicated, and I think one of the reasons I find blockchains interesting is I like the ability to open up the market in a way that conventional businesses can't ever do. And I think that's where we'll see a really big institutional adoption the next year. But I think they'll struggle actually for things to find outside of stablecoins, and that's where Flare is pitching itself. It's okay if you want to do institutional business, but you want to do more. We've got a fantastic layer for you to build things on, that is nicely decentralized and gives you amazing compute. So that leads into Flare 2.0, which is something I announced at the kind of tail end of Q2, but we don't have to cover that here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really nice overview you gave, and I believe that as well. And a lot of the advantages for DeFi and blockchain seems to be, of course, very appealing to these institutions for the very same reason almost that we are excited for. It's just a different, not only magnitude but also application, right? Like transparency, auditability, accountability. Everything is like public. You can verify these things. That is very exciting to me, of course, and it seems like it's very also exciting for institutions. Even yeah,
I give you like one small
yeah,
example that comes to mind. It's like, trade finance is the type of finance that allows the entire world to basically send and receive products. There would be like no consumer economy if we didn't have some form of trade finance. There's tons of product sitting on the sea, tons of product sitting on, in cargo depots, in ports, in trains. All of that product someone has financed. But it has been the preserve of maybe 10 merchant banks to finance the entire global trade end to end for the last 60 years. And that is great for those banks, although they're becoming less and less interested in it because the cost of doing business is higher because of things like sanctions and trying to figure out who you're actually doing business with. So there's huge corridors that are becoming underserved. And one of the things that being able to move finance, like finance that touches the real world on chain, does is it enables like individuals, me and you, to get involved in global finance in a way that is like sort of sensible and, if built correctly, relatively low risk. And this is like the power that this technology can bring to bear, is cracking open a market that has been controlled by 10 people for 60 years, 10 entities for 60 years, and ultimately allowing people to get a better yield, which is really important, than they could get just by keeping their money in a bank, by doing something more interesting financially.
right. Yeah, and this cross-border, like global nature of it is probably the, as you said, the most exciting one here. There's also some interesting questions, of course, that would come up with, let's say, you have a financial product, a DeFi product, or a financial product in that sense. Jurisdictions become very blurry, right? It's on the blockchain? Maybe it's a smart contract, it's deployed somewhere. Um, like where are the borders nowadays then, and because everybody can access it, and that is something, has pros and cons probably, depending on from which
But
perspective.
this is where data becomes very valuable, because you can't go to court in the blockchain. So a trade can only be settled by, well, what data is, did this product get delivered? Do I have the data for it? Can I expose that data on chain to settle the trade? So that's a very simple way of talking about something that's very complex, but
Right.
ultimately, the idea is if you can get the data, you can open the market up.
Yeah, and we kind of right into this now already. So to go into that direction, there have been a lot of projects that I've been seeing, specifically now coming from the XRP ledger. Talking about that yield, you mentioned that it's very important. Opportunity cost, people want to, capital flows where the yield is, and of course, under consideration of risk, but it goes typically where the yield is. And on the XRP ledger, that I would say landscape is right now developing, and we are seeing a lot of projects pushing through that. And so, there's various terms, for example, staking. I just want to make it very clear that staking as that form, we don't really have on the XRP ledger. Actually, we don't. This is a clear no. Um, if you don't mind, maybe you want to explain from your point of view, also from your expertise, what is staking? So for people that they know what is staking.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think there's a lot of conflation of the term staking in the XRP community, with things that are not, really staking. So, for instance, putting your money into an AMM is not staking. It is being a liquidity provider. Putting your money into a thing that calls itself staking, but is actually where they use your XRP to take trades on centralized exchanges is not staking. That is essentially investing in some kind of unregulated fund. And I think there's if I've looked at most of the projects, many of them are misusing the term staking. Staking is sort of fundamentally how a proof of stake network is secured. So on the XRP ledger, the way it is kind of secured is it uses a UNL, unique node list, right? And you have these overlaps of the UNL, and this basically forms the network topology, and that is how consensus occurs within the XRP. On Bitcoin, you have nodes, but you also have miners, and miners expend energy in order to collectively confirm a transaction. In a proof of stake network, you have a validator, and a validator stakes to their own validator. This is called self-bond. And then other people can also stake to that validator. It's called delegated stake. And specifically, ultimately, the validator's power is determined by how much stake they have between their own stake and the stake that is delegated towards them. So if if there's 1,000 validators and they each have a certain amount of stake, that dictates their power in sending messages around in the network that then ultimately come to consensus. It's a slightly simplified version of it, but that is what staking is. It is the conference of economic value of the token towards a particular validator or some set of validators, depending on how the staking works, that defines how consensus is reached in a network. And that is staking, and that is the definition of staking. And participating in financial products is not staking.
Thank you. Very good that you made that also very clear. And I always try to make that also very clear, but because people, they just read lines and then get confused by what's going on. But it's very very important to make that distinction because it comes also with a risk the implication, right? The risk factor is totally different between you using it to, let's say, delegate or stake for a validator, then give it to maybe a money market fund that goes and or an AMM, as you said, with impermanent loss. It's very very different.
Absolutely. So with staking on the whole, so if you stake Flare on Flare, we don't have a slashing risk, but you may not get rewards if your validator doesn't do the right things. On other networks, there can be slashing, whereby the stake that is delegated to the validator gets slashed. Usually it's only accrued rewards that is slashed. And so, slashing is a very rare occurrence and it's only a percentage. So the risk is very, very low generally in staking, in real staking. The risk, obviously, of impermanent loss in an AMM, which is not staking, is a very different and much higher risk, depending on what assets are in the AMM. So, if it's 2 stable coins in the AMM, the risk is much lower. if it's a stable coin against a volatile coin like a crypto, the impermanent loss risk is much higher. If you're staking to an entity that is effectively a fund that hasn't done any KYC or AML on you, I would say that the risk is extremely high because they're breaking the law to start with. But that's, if they haven't done AML and KYC on you, to me, that's a real indication of who they are as people. They haven't done just the basics to be compliant. And so to define staking, it's to stake to secure a network, and that is what is being built by an institutional partner of Flare. I'm not going to name them on this call because they want to announce who they are and do their own marketing and things like that. But we have defined using our protocols a way to create a staking system for XRP that allows effectively XRP to be staked to secure services in the form of blockchains or other services that are a form of distributed network. Could be like an Oracle service, could be, and we can come onto this, and I'd love to come onto this, a machine learning service. But ultimately, the concept of what's being built on Flare is the ability to stake XRP into some service to receive yield, and that yield is in the token that is offered by that service. We can't create XRP yield out of thin air. The only way you could create XRP out of some form of product, it would be if it were a financial product. And it's, we're not building a financial product, we are building a security product whereby XRP can be used to secure other services.
Very well said. And Thanos, I saw you unmute. I'm pretty sure you want to chime in here as well to that staking topic.
Yeah, I think Hugo, for the most part, touched upon how we've thought about restaking overall, or just the XRP staking product. To be clear, when you put your XRP into anything on chain, like there's different parameters that you're agreeing to, right? If you put in, let's say, XRP into a lending protocol, or like any of these other types of protocols, they have the ability to rehypothecate that specific asset, right? So if you deposit USDC into a lending protocol, or let's say RLUSD into a lending protocol, they are then giving that RLUSD to someone on the other side, and lending that out, right? So in theory, that's rehypothecation of an asset. In staking, you are agreeing to a specific set of rules and consensus that your stake would abide by for a specific validator, right? So it's very, very much different from liquidity providing on chain versus staking to generate yield from specific validated services, right?
Right. Yeah. Thanks for also giving that context here too. So one thing, because we're in the middle of the of that discussion specifically here, deep in the weeds of it, is like the two questions that typically I would say are very, very important to always ask and have in mind when looking at these things is when we talk not all, now we define what staking is, but even beyond now, yield opportunities or opportunities in general, DeFi, when we talk about DeFi, is where does the yield come from, right? Very, very classic. And the second one is it custodial, self-custodial, right? Like what are the risks to my holdings? Am I in control? Am I not in control? How does it work? So I want to hear from you, Hugo, for these two things specifically. Where does the yield come from? Maybe you can give like a specific example for your with Flare. What are you guys doing, just so that people understand where that is coming from and why it is so important to understand where the yield is coming from. Because we all have seen this. where you see like all these people say, hey, I'm going to use this product, or using this service, it is so attractive, and then you see the yield and you ask, oh cool, that is very attractive indeed, but where does the yield come from? And then it's like shrugging shoulders. I find this very, very
Mhm.
dangerous.
So the yield comes from, in the staking system that is being built by our partner for XRP using Flare. The yield comes from ultimately the emissions of whatever service you are using. So if you look at any proof of stake network, they emit tokens as a way to reward the validators for participating. The validators that have staked and the people that have staked to those validators as a reward for securing the network. So, next year, once Flare is fully distributed, our yield will be roughly just a little shy of 5% on total token supply. Like any proof of stake based system, the yield is coming from providing your XRP as security and getting paid in the token of that service in order to for essentially giving that network or service security.
So basically, it comes so there either from the protocol, right? Because if you secure with the protocol, let's say in a classic proof of stake, it comes from the protocol. But if you secure other, in your case, other apps or chains with it, then it comes from those hosts, right? Like they would need to pay.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you're securing a chain through the staking service, that is effectively the same as delegating your XRP to a validator on that chain.
Yeah. Do you want to chime in, Thanos? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, for sure. So with the staking protocol, right, you would stake your XRP, and then you're providing, let's say, security to specific types of validators, or what in the stake or in the restaking world they called AVS, which are actively validated services, right? These actively validated services are essentially types of protocols that exist with a specific set of rules that you would stake to, right? So a lot of what has been talked about for AVSs has been pre-confirmations. So the ability for chains to essentially settle faster with some guarantees to like what that chain needs to be able to come to consensus faster before the block is mined. So pre-confirmations have been talked about a lot within the EVM world. Um, there's also different types of protocols that you can build that would have stake, right? So Hyperlane is another one that people use on EigenLayer to stake to. So that's specifically how yield on an ongoing basis would be generated for people that are staking, right? It's staking to specific AVSs or protocols that have a specific set of rules as to what they need, and then provide and pay for that security.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that paying for the security is essentially like when the protocol would, in a again in a classic proof of stake, would pay the people who are putting their stake uh, up for the validator, so that essentially you are confirming blocks. That's your reward for doing so.
Yep, exactly. You are agreeing to a specific set of rules that a protocol needs security for,
Yeah.
let's say during some period of time or for some specific like action, and they're willing to pay for that security during that like to execute that specific action, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Now that we know, okay, that is how staking works, and this is how you try to get this basically out for other chains and own app or app chains. And we also know it's not possible on the XRP ledger. Now is of course the question: how does that connection work? How can someone then on the XRP ledger, when they have, let's say, XRP, do all of these things without, basically, because XRP only exists on the XRP ledger, it cannot leave it, like that. How does it work? How does it connect? Do basically validators on on Flare run XRP Ledger nodes to monitor these things, and where are the funds go? This is like the second one. Is it self custodial, non custodial? How does that work?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let's try to break. You want to break this down?
No,
Or I'm happy to.
I think you should give it a stab, Hugo.
Okay. So we have, we're Flare, we have data protocols, we're building effectively a bridge between XRP and Flare using those data protocols. We introduced, XRP v1.1 as a concept not too long ago, and we'll be upgrading from XRP v1.1 to FXRP v2, which uses protocol managed wallets. So let's just deal with the protocol managed wallets version of FXRP because it's like the simplest. Ultimately, protocol managed wallets allows Flare to set up an address on the XRP ledger that can only make transactions based on an output from Flare's consensus. Right. This is the long and the short of protocol managed wallets. There's quite a long blog on it, but ultimately it's an address that can only make transactions based on Flare's consensus. So something happens on Flare, or some data comes from another network, and this is the key bit, whereby essentially you have a staked position, and it's staked to another network, let's say an L2, or a sidechain, let's say an XRP-based sidechain. We run nodes on the XRP ledger. We run nodes on the network that you want to stake to, and we're able to determine, and we're able to essentially prove onto Flare what the validators on that sidechain have done. We can prove that they've been good. We can prove they've been bad. Which allows the rewards to be apportioned or slashed, if slashing exists. So that effectively is, we have a bridge for the XRP. It gets staked. It gets apportioned to a set of validators. Whether it's effectively, like, let's just use the XRP sidechain as the example. Those validators get power on that sidechain based on how much XRP is staked to them, and they receive rewards. Those rewards effectively go down to Flare, where the XRP is staked, and are apportioned to those people who have staked to that sidechain. Now, it gets a lot more complicated than that when you start talking about liquid staking tokens and yield strategies, but that is the basic setup of how this works.
Thomas, do you want to also chime in? Because I wasn't sure if you also want to give context.
No, but I think Hugo covered it there.
Perfect. Yeah, because typically the difficult things are, we mentioned that where is the yield coming from, and securing a network or apps is very straightforward, right? It's not something more complicated or a very difficult DeFi strategy behind it, with a lot of moving parts. It's like you putting something on stake for a host chain that says, hey, it's hard to bootstrap a network, so I might as well, use something, use a service like that. So that makes very clear where the yield comes from. Also, it's very easy to say there's then no yield if there's, of course, no user or no app or chain that would host something like that there. But there would be, of course, yield. The more yield, the more people would use it, and that becomes a competitive environment. So that dynamic makes very much sense. I would still love to dive in a little bit more into the custodial part, and to see how that works. For example, the slashing and things like that. If someone would misbehave or anything like this, how can someone ensure, or how can you guys ensure to have basically these funds being able to slash or similar, but also keep it like, still non-custodial, as you said. I think that goes with the protocol managed wallets that comes into that play. But before we go into this, so just stop on that. I see Devon has his hands up, and feel free to chime in, Devon, as we go. You've been here.
Yes, that was actually going to be the exact question that I asked. And to add on to the self-custodial part, could you also explain if there's a time lock period for the asset as well, and how long it could be, if you could expand on that.
Sure, I'll deal with the custodial part. I'm not sure we can talk about the time locks at the moment because I think, that it's not, that is going to be very dependent on the product and each individual actively validated service, right? So, each one will have their own rules. But ultimately, the custodial bit is quite simple. Rather than using a custodian, you're depositing your XRP to a protocol managed wallet. This is not a custodian. This is a wallet that can only make transactions based on something that happens on Flare. It's that simple. It basically extends Flare's consensus onto the XRP ledger. So you can think of it as let's try and break this down into an analogy, or like a very simple use case to kind of build the understanding. So let's say you want to, and this is not staking, this is a financial product, but let's say you just want to have a bet with your friend on XRP's price at the end of June. And today the XRP price is, last I looked, about 1.9. And you want to say, your friend says, I think it'll be 5, let's say. And you say, well, I think it'll be 4. And you both put up XRP. But where'd you put it? Okay, so you would send your XRP to a protocol managed wallet, which would hold it based on an application on Flare that has been written that allows people to express these kind of views. And that application, at the end of the term, at the end of the period by which the bet is running, will take the price from the Flare time series oracle of XRP and effectively decide, it will say to the protocol managed wallet, okay, you need to send 10 XRP to Bob. Or if the other person in the bet, it's called Freddie, you need to send 10 XRP to Freddie, right? Like it's entirely decentralized. There's no people that can change that. It's entirely based on having written an application on Flare that can trigger a transaction in the protocol managed wallet. Does that make sense? Can I break that down more?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense because it makes also a lot more sense when we think about how would, because when we think of staking again, we need to go back to the original idea. It's secure network, and if you do it in a classic direct way, let's say you have a validator, let's say Ethereum, you would stake with your validator, self bond as you said, and if I misbehave or whatever, right, I get slashed. But in order to have that, the protocol needs to have basically ability to do that, right? So the protocol acts there in a way that it can do that even. And I think this is the only way that anyone can do that is just with the protocol itself. It cannot be someone else, right? It has to be the protocol.
Yeah, you need protocol, and you need the data, and you need a smart contract engine that allows the protocol to process that data. And that's and you need a way to administer the XRP, which is what the protocol managed wallet gives you. And so all of these things can be built on this stack that we have built. And all of these things can be built, most importantly, without, essentially just using consensus, not using centralized party.
Okay, so if someone would want to do that, they would need to put it into the protocol managed wallet, and that protocol managed wallet, what kind of capabilities does it have? Can I as a user still move funds in and out, things like that?
No, you as a user, you can not move funds in and out. You can deposit to a protocol managed wallet in order to get something on Flare. Whether that is to participate in, let's say, a bet between your friend or to stake XRP. And then, let's say, take the staking XRP example. You staked XRP and you have received a liquid staking token for a particular set of services that, someone has created a liquid staking token. So they essentially, maybe they're a DAO, they decide, okay, your XRP gets staked to this entity or this entity, this set of validators or this set of validators. And this is a very common thing in proof of stake based networks. There are liquid staking providers who basically do the job on behalf of the community to apportion stake. And again, it's done in a decentralized way. So it's not like they can just get their hands on the XRP. It's done with a contract, smart contract. So, they receive effectively the ability to deploy the XRP to a validator and only to a validator of a service, not deploy the XRP to anywhere else. So you've now received a liquid staking token. And so, sorry?
Yeah, if you want to continue, sorry, I will.
Yeah, so you've now received a liquid staking token, and you want to now get your XRP back. So you send that liquid staking token back to the staking contract, and this then effectively is like a redeem, and it sends Flare comes to consensus over that, and the protocol managed wallet sends you back your XRP.
Yeah, so just to clarify there, the XRP is always available to the user to take in and out of the protocol managed wallet, right? And that XRP is held in a trust minimized way, right? Like it's hosted in a trusted execution environment, which is a lot of what we've been talking about recently. And if you look at trusted execution environments more broadly, it's becoming the way to facilitate a lot of like crypto infrastructure in a decentralized way, right? So if you look at Flashbots on Ethereum, they moved all of their infrastructure into TEs. Fala and a lot of these other networks have also been looking at TEs to help scale and use trust minimized execution environments, right?
Can you quickly maybe explain what trust execution environments
Yeah,
are?
so trust execution environments are essentially it's essentially here, let's put it this way, a server or a computer that has encrypted memory that no one can access, right? So no one can access your specific XRP unless there's a specific set of instructions that allow it to be accessed, right? So it's very similar to how a smart contract operates, right? And these servers would be hosted by numerous different people that then allow for those specific set of instructions to be executed within that encrypted memory. That memory cannot physically be taken by anyone, which a lot of people talk about seeds and how you'd get seeds. So, I mean, my background comes from Bitcoin custody. I used to help people learn and understand how you custody your own Bitcoin, right? So I'm also very sensitive towards this topic. What we'd always tell people is well, you don't want to store your seed on your computer because if anyone ever gets access to your memory, they would be able to essentially extract the seed from the memory. But if that memory is encrypted and no one can access that memory, well, you can store a seed there safely, right? So that's the idea behind protocol managed wallets and how we think about
So
like the custodial to
yeah,
non-custodial side.
so they are basically chips servers. Is it like how can people think about them?
Yeah,
Are they basically full
I mean,
machines?
the way to think about it is it's an enclave, or let's say, honestly, you can think about it very similarly to how like a smart contract operates, right? It's an enclave which does specific sets of instructions that you give it. And if the people who are launching this trusted execution environment agree to those specific set of instructions, there's only specific things that trusted execution environment can do. Um, and that would be public and like people would know what those specific things are. So you have a smart contract, think about it as the way that you have specific methods or functions on that smart contract, right? Very similarly to that. No one can access that specific memory without like destroying the memory physically. And those sets of instructions can only be operated as long as there's certain parameters that are agreed upon and then executed on.
Do you know who is manufacturing
Yeah,
these?
so Intel, AMD, NVIDIA. Actually, not AMD, but Intel and NVIDIA. And there's one other manufacturer that I think that that we speak to. So if you can, in theory, launch trusted execution environments that help manage these protocol managed wallets in, let's say, numerous different locations that all help control and access or control and instruct those specific wallets, it's essentially a very trust minimized way of facilitating transactions on the XRPL and on Flare at the same time.
That is interesting. So basically, also what you said, they basically get also more and more adoption on other chains. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the flash bots and so on because they have like very much advantages that people cannot view them
Yeah,
prior to something happening. So it's very good for these sort of
yeah,
things.
exactly. I mean, it almost gives you like GPU level or CPU level compute. I would say like GPU level compute without the security risks of losing keys, right? Or let's say without the security risks of your seed being exposed, which is major in crypto.
Let's go to Shellfish and then yeah, Shellfish, go ahead.
Hi, Hugo. Hi, Thanos. Yeah, I had a question. So I had caught a video from a few months back, and it was talking about Santiago building on Flare, and I was wondering, I believe his was regarding decentralized futures long term. Do you think this could spark more institutional grade derivatives across chains?
Yeah, for sure. So I think very plainly, to put it this way, obviously you saw Ripple acquire like a prime brokerage today, right? For $1.25 billion. That is absolutely no joke. At the same time, Coinbase is making a push to acquire Deribit, right, which allows you to structure option calls. Um, and so historically, what you see on chain that has been the most popular has been perps, which we have a few perp dexes that have launched, including Santiago's, which we're still iterating on to make it better and more user friendly. And I just think more broadly, like perps have been the most popular instrument of leverage to trade within crypto, and you're seeing a lot of institutions use perps in numerous different ways. I mean, I'd be happy to have like an entire other discussion on as to like how people are leveraging perps to trade, but institutions and a lot of funds use perps to trade within crypto. And I think options more broadly, as markets do mature, they become more popular. Um, so you'll start to see more volume on options. You'll start to see more liquidity increase, and the great thing about XRP and Flare and Bitcoin is that they trade 24/7, right? So these options are extremely malleable, and there's very different ways that you can kind of structure them. So yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about options in crypto. I think that it's really gonna unleash a side of users and institutions on chain specifically as well. And I think Flare is striving to help build that for XRP users and alongside the XRPL sidechain.
Thanks, Thanos. I'm sure Ved and Death Ranger and I will be reaching out, and I'm sure there's quite a few people in the community that would love to have another fireside with you.
Yeah, I'm also thinking here, Hugo, just from of course hearing all of this is very much thought through, but this also shows specifically um how much more work it needs to do these things in a decentralized manner versus shortcutting and doing it in a centralized manner, right? Because all of these things wouldn't be absolutely not necessary if I just say, give me, your money or something like this. Like all of these things we could just skip, but to do it in a decentralized manner, it takes so much more work.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spent a long time, building out Flare, building out the data protocols. We can't do any of this without the data protocols in a decentralized way. Of course, I could have gone to a custodian and said I want to make a bridge, and I want to handle people's XRP and I want to use it in financial products. I could have done that really quickly, probably in a couple of weeks. But I would also have to KYC and AML everyone in order to do that, which then you're really just back in conventional finance.
Fantastic. Well, there was been keeping it short and sweet here. I mean, the hour blast through without me even thinking how fast that was going here. Um, I really, really enjoyed it, and 100% we definitely have to do it again. And I see Death Ranger has his hands up. We definitely, go with Death Ranger first before we go to the outro.
Thank you, Vet, and for having me here today, and Hugo for making time, and Thanos for being here. I have been long time waiting for this protocol to go live, and been a supporter of an enthusiast of the Flare network and the Songbird ecosystem, and it's been a very long journey for you, Hugo, and really I'd like to personally hear just where you feel like you guys are as a team and your accomplishments that you guys have made, and then somewhat relatively short term for your guys' future and where you really want to see things go, and the developments that you'd really like to see being done on top of Flare from an application standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. How's the team and everything? I mean, the team's operating in a way that I've never seen it operate before, extremely well. Protocols getting shipped, they've been shipped, they're getting, we're much finer running engine than we were, let's say, 2 years ago. And we're much more capable of sticking to timelines. Part of that's having a larger team, part of that's just having a lot more experience in managing teams and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm very, very happy with where we are as a team in terms of where we're going. I mean, I think it's very interesting to me that Ripple bought a prime broker today. And they'll do very well out of that. But it's amusing to me because I spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is missing in DeFi? What is missing in the space? And one of the things that is really missing is a decentralized prime brokerage function. One of the things prime brokers do is they extend margin to traders against their existing positions. So you might have a large amount of Tesla stock, and you might go to your prime broker and say, hey, I really want to buy, I don't know, IBM. Not sure why you would, but whatever. I need to borrow against this Tesla stock. Prime broker will assess the risk of the Tesla stock and lend you some margin and set margin levels where you get liquidated and all this kind of stuff. But this doesn't exist as a crypto protocol. And what we're building, this doesn't exist as a crypto protocol, as a decentralized protocol. It obviously is a huge thing in traditional finance, and that's what Ripple purchased. They purchased a traditional finance prime broker. But it'd be kind of cool if it was a protocol, but it can't be a protocol today. First thing you need for it to be a protocol is protocol managed wallets. Second thing you need is vast compute. You need vast compute because you need to be able to assess the risk of the various different assets that people would be willing to essentially extend margin to. But you also need that compute such that if you're offering this as a product in a decentralized way, someone can't come in and change that compute and suddenly apply zero risk to fart coin, enabling a large amount of money to be lent to people that want to take fart coin positions, when it should only be less than 1% of that money should be lent to people that want to take fart coin positions. So the question is, how do you get a very large amount of compute, but make it safe so that it can't be altered? And this is where we're going with TEs. So we're building protocol managed wallets so that it can hold assets. And we're going with TEs in the direction of, I want to be able to run really complex models, really complex risk models, really heavy compute, applications. And I want to be able to do this in a way that you can't be rugged. And so this then, if you join those two things together, safe compute and protocol managed wallets, then you can build a totally decentralized prime broker. And that's kind of really interesting to me. So hopefully that answers, your question of where we want to go in the future. It's basically, we've got the data now, we're getting more data, we're building the bridges, now we want to do the compute.
Fantastic. And I mean, for this conversation, it was. I mean, went by so quick, and it was so good to talk all together with it about this very topic. Plus, the XRP ledger specifically is expanding so much in its ecosystem, cross chain, interoperability, and it's like a huge ecosystem and multi chain ecosystem now. And it's very very good to see that so many people are working together to make it seamless. People can utilize multiple products, platforms, services, and not limited to maybe only what is available, maybe on their own chain, or even less within, let's say, their platform that they are typically using. One thing I want to say as well is, Hugo, I saw that you're also going to be at XRPL Apex in Singapore, which is fantastic.
I am indeed. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, that's really cool. I saw you as a speaker, and I pinned up also at the top the XRP Ledger Apex for those who want to register and get a ticket and chime in. Definitely do so. I will be there as well. A lot of people from the community will be there. So if you can make it there, would be fantastic to meet you and have good discussions over there with the audience. Of course, Hugo will be there too. And I also want to say, if you cannot make it, that's also important to say. If you cannot make it, don't worry. There will be live sessions and live streams. So even people who may not be able to participate physically, virtually, I'm sure there will be done a lot that people can also participate in that. Yeah, well, with that being said, first, Hugo and Thanos, thank you very much for having that discussion. It was very, very insightful, also educational. I love that. So that people have a good idea of what goes into, like, all the work to make it decentralized, to know where the yield is coming from, all of these things, custodial solutions, product managed wallets, all of these things work together. And it's very very important for people to have this on their radar, so whenever you go around and see for opportunities, yield, whatever, that you put these questions high on your list and check whatever that fits for you. But that is very very important. Specifically, I want to reiterate, for us on the XRP ledger, because we are kind of more new to the DeFi ecosystem, having AMMs, yield, and all of these things, projects being built on top, and specifically the community to go through these learnings a little bit more smoother, and not with, hopefully not that many mistakes and issues. So yeah, with that being said, again, thanks Hugo, Thanos, for coming, and everybody else for listening. I'm definitely going to do it next time again as well, and wish everyone a nice afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me, and happy Tuesday.
Yo.
What's up, man? You want to invite Ace?
Yeah, let's send him an invitation.
He may be working.
That was a really nice call, huh?
I was impressed.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Well,
What was something that really piqued your mind? Let's send the invitation to.
I got like 2 pages. And we talk about one. It's interesting to hear, when he kind of asked Hugo about, what his thoughts were, what he has heard from, the institutional investing and their feedback. Because, Hugo's actually probably more in tune with institutionals than retail because that's his background. So I thought that was an interesting kind of caveat where they kind of talked a little bit about how institutionals felt about Flare and the process and where blockchain was versus retail. That was very, very interesting.
For sure. No, there were a lot of things. I want to listen to it again because there were a lot of very interesting parts. And yeah, I really enjoyed the part where he explained what staking is and what it isn't.
Oh, yes.
I think that was really nice. And then I really enjoyed when he said that the XRP staking, here is Ace is here. How's it going, Ace? What's up?
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
I'm good. How's it going?
It's been a busy day, but I was able to catch the spaces. So heard some very interesting things. I'm pretty sure you guys did too.
For sure. What stuck out the most for you?
Nothing to do with the technology.
That's good. I feel like that's good because I feel like it's always so much about the technology that sometimes people are like don't understand it and they're not excited about something that they don't understand. So you saying that, I think that's
let
good.
me take a stab at it. Let me take a stab at it, right? Because I think maybe this impressed you along with me, like that TradFi actually ran the world part, right? Nothing ships or moves without some kind of traditional finance to move it. And being the fact that he specified there were several gaps in that area, I'm really curious what gaps he wants to fill.
Oh, that wasn't even it. But I mean, that is a good point, Stephen. Yeah, that's a really good point. But
I mean,
no,
what go, I won't hear yours now, Ben.
What I was most impressed about was, mind you, my first crypto investment was XRP. For the longest time, you had different factions within that community. You have the people with these crazy evaluations, these crazy numbers, riddles, all that stuff. On the other hand, you have individuals who actually, you know, can talk about, the principles of decentralized finance, network effects, all that stuff. That's eventually where I kind of gravitated to. But on this particular call, what I was most impressed about was the XRP community's curiosity of how protocol managed wallets, XRP staking, using Flare as that jumping off point will be. They seemed very curious and interested. And in the past, it just seems like the XRP community wasn't really interested in decentralized finance in general, didn't know what it was. It was a big thing when the AMM came out. There was a lot of issues when it first came out. Some people just simply didn't trust it. And now you have different DeFi applications like Doppler Finance, several DeFi applications coming live on the XRP sidechain. So the XRP community is going to get more exposure of decentralized finance, whether they like it or not. And I'm starting to see the gears turn in their head and be more accepting of other networks, not necessarily trying to leech and extract value from the XRP community, but enable the XRP community to even be able to create streams of passive income or what have you. So that's what I was most impressed about. And I'm happy and hopeful that more conversations like this occur in the future as more and more functionality gets built out.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy the explanation of what's XRP or like what's staking in general. Like that explanation, I think that was a great clarification of the term because now everybody uses staking for everything.
Right.
And right. It's only when you're like giving security to the consensus of a protocol, like it's not staking otherwise. So I think that was really good. And then I really appreciated when he said that the XRP staking is not a financial product. When they asked him about the yield, like where does the yield come from? Who raised a hand? Who comes the yield? Where does the yield come from? And he said from other protocols distributing their inflation in the same way that Ethereum pays their inflation. It's not that you're making a financial product with the staking. It's just that you are you share a part of the rewards or the inflation that is being distributed.
Right.
Sarah,
So, yeah.
do you have anything you want to add?
Sorry, I just meant to applaud because I really agree that that was a good point that he brought up.
Yeah. What stood up the most for you, Sarah?
Oh, got her.
No. And then the other thing that really
you know
stood
what?
out for me. What's up?
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna go on to something that stood out, or I thought was curious, but go ahead.
That the so what I understood, and I asked this after I read the Core Vault and the PMW's protocol managed wallets, and I said, okay, so maybe staking to FX for XRP collateral, that could be a service that could pay you in Flare. So what I'm thinking is that if you want to mint FXRP, you deposit it there, but you could also deposit XRP on the XRP ledger. And that security and that collateral allows the agents to be able to mint FXRP at will and redeem. So you would get a part of the rewards by doing that staking. So not for the people that are minting FXRP, but for people that are staking for the collateral. I have a feeling that that's a connection that's going to be revealed pretty soon.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Like you kind of there's two sides of that equation. Like why should you bridge versus why not use protocol managed wallets? And I think there's going to be a variation of rewards versus risk reward to kind of compare it all. I think again it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, with PMWs, I don't think we'll be bridging. Like I think even with F assets, we'll be using those PMWs. Therefore, you eliminate the need to bridge anyway. Now, what I'm kind of fuzzy on is how do agents then interact with, is it one PMW or do each agent have their own PMW? Do you stake or do you deposit your XRP in that particular agent's wallet hosted on the XRP ledger, or how does that work? Because
we better write this down for tomorrow.
Right.
Big question for tomorrow. Because I think you're 100% onto something there.
Yeah, because to me the Core Vault sounds like one wallet. I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm kind of hazy on that. So I'd like to get some clarification on that. But the fact that two different protocols seemingly could use the same technology to present that optionality, I think it's pretty cool. Hugo mentioned, a liquid staked version of XRP when you do stake your XRP to secure protocols on the XRP ledger through Flare, needing to have a good liquidity pair against FXRP, and then having that rail there. It's all pretty interesting, man. And I think like I said, I really like that these communities are starting to come around and be more accepting of Flare, and get away from the whole, oh, I'm mad at you because you changed the airdrop criteria type of thing. I think we're well past that. I think what's being built here. Yeah, there's still some people holding on to that, but I mean, hey, we gotta move on eventually, right? Like things had to happen. The reason why they brought up that change, and for the most part, it seems like the change was for the better. So, it'd be interesting to see what type of protocols this staking protocol on Flare for XRP assist in securing. I was looking at Eigenlayer and the different type of protocols that look for that security service through staking. There's also a similar protocol that does it for Bitcoin. I forget the name. I think Hugo mentioned it a while back. But just what I've seen in terms of demand for that type of service, it's pretty high. So it'll be interesting to see how things kind of work itself out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the staking, all of these protocols tap in potentially to a massive market, which is the XRP. So
Right.
it just allows you to, in a way, invest in other products without putting new money, just from the assets that you already have. And I think that that's brilliant. It's a similar way that if you had ETH, by parking it in Kinetic, you would be able to invest in Flare because you're getting like a APY on Flare. So without putting new money, you could bring and invest on Flare just by bridging your ETH. So I think it's going to be a similar thing, or like as an opportunity for a lot of people to use their XRP to work, put their XRP to work.
You know, I'm curious that, and if I wrote this down wrong, that's why I'm curious. But you know, I wrote down that, you know, Hugo pointed out Flare is not a financial service but a security service. And again, if I wrote that down incorrectly, I'd love for somebody to correct me. But that's kind of what I think I heard him say, which was kind of interesting. I thought on that, his kind of perspective of Flare kind of throws a little bit interesting perspective.
Yeah, I think I missed that part, but I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So he was talking about Beth asked him about the yield on XRP. He said, where does it come from? And then Hugo explained that the only way to make yield, like to make new XRP, is by having a financial product. And then he said, we are not building a financial product. We'll be building a security where you stake your XRP and the yield comes in the distribution from that other protocol. So if you're staking your XRP on Flare, then you would get rewarded in Flare tokens. So it's no new XRP. That's what he said. That's what he said about not being a financial product. Does that make it clear?
But that's going to apply to other chains, not just XRP, right? So as they bring on other chains doing the same stuff with the protocol managed wallets, they are shifting from creating financial services to more of a security type service.
Correct. Dr. XRP, do you want to ask something, say something? All right, come over if you listen to this. Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited. I feel like XRP staking must be coming close because I feel like there's a lot of noise being made about it, and I like it.
Yeah, you can always get a vibe check for how close we are when the marketing rollout starts happening. So Hugo is pretty busy, I'm sure. I can only imagine. I mean, he's going to be at the Apex event for the XRP Ledger in Singapore not too long from now. So, I mean, he's in full throttle mode in terms of making sure you know, him and the Flare team are doing their due diligence in terms of spreading the word of this XRP staking service and what it could offer. But I want to circle back to what you said about, you know, Flare's not really a financial product, or they're not building financial products. They're more so of like a security service. I mean, if you look at what Flare is focusing on, it's purely data. And it's hard to do anything, even build financial products without solid data. So they have the decentralized data acquisition protocols. They have that unlocked. That's their bread and butter. Now it's using that same level of expertise to figure out different ways of, for instance, bridging. If PMWs turn out to be like the best thing since sliced bread, I don't really see today's traditional bridges staying around for long. I can see, if this works right, this becoming more of an industry standard. And kind of like what was alluded to on the call, there are several protocols now looking to leverage the technology and capabilities that T's offer, along with confidentiality, along with that data security, data privacy type elements. So when you kind of circle around all of that and consider all of that, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're not worried about creating the next best DeFi product. They're worried about enabling the next best DeFi product. Big difference.
I think where they're going to come in, and Hugo dropped a little nugget there, I feel like, was he would like to see machine learning as a service. And we know the Flare team is made up of 90% machine learning people, 95% machine learning people. So what is that envision for him? That's very interesting to me on that, because that is what they are all about, machine
Right.
learning.
And there's a little quantum computing sprinkled in there too. So
That's
you
out of my
know,
pay grade.
that's far out of my pay grade. I may dabble in it here and there, but I am no expert by any means. I love talking about it. I love researching it, of course, but those guys have PhDs and all types of stuff. So, I'll stay in my lane.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there was something I wanted to say about what you just said. So, okay, yeah. The other thing that it's very interesting is how this whole connection can connect the XRP ledger with the EVM sidechain, because he did mention something about that. So I feel like this is so much bigger of just bridging XRP with Flare. It's just what that connection with the EVM chain can enable. And I think that's a very interesting thing also to consider.
Yeah, most definitely.
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, oh, go ahead, Steven. Go ahead.
No. I was pivoting to a different topic, so I want go ahead.
Okay. I guess in a way I kind of am too. I hope to see this level of cross community interaction with the other crypto communities that Flare is looking to enable decentralized smart contract capabilities to, like Bitcoin. I don't know what we got to do to kind of get into that space, but I would love for us to be able to kind of extend that olive branch to the Bitcoin community as well. We have the XRP community starting to come around a little bit. They're, like I said, they seem very curious. I would like to see the same from like others from the Bitcoin space, or whatever asset that you can kind of utilize on Flare. So even maybe the Ethereum community as well. So
I'd love to see us connect more with the Doge community. I mean, they're fixing to be rolled out in it as well. And actually, I feel like it's kind of weird where it trying to find that main lead driver in the Doge community. I don't know them. Maybe it's just me on that aspect of it, but XRP kind of know the major players because I've been in XRP so long.
Right. I think we had a space, or Hugo had a spaces with the Doge community a while back, but I don't think we've ever circled back to continue that conversation. So yeah, I would agree with that.
So this is going to be my ignorance type question. He was talking about yield being paid for by the network and token of the network token, which is about 5%. And so that's that inflation everybody kind of talks about, correct? When I hear that, is that correct? Where Flare will inflate by about 5% because of that yield process there?
That inflation is just like the means for the FTSOs to live.
Yeah.
Like that's the inflation. So once we stop having the Flare drops, then the only inflation that is going to happen is that.
Gotcha. Yeah, which would be about 5% is what he kind of said is the goal, or what they're set at.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be like a 0.7% per month, I think. Something like that.
Gotcha. I was just making sure I understood that correctly, because again, everybody always gets so tied up in the inflationary part of it. But if the network grows well beyond 5%, then inflation is not a problem. It's when you stop growing that you just got to start worrying about inflation.
Yep.
Do I have that correct?
Okay, can you say that again, please?
So inflation being 5% really shouldn't bother people if the growth of the network is beyond 5%. It's when the growth of the network drops below 5% that inflation becomes a major concern.
For sure.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think, especially in terms of Flare, we're trending to 0 in terms of inflation. So it's not 5% forever.
That's not what that's why I'm having this conversation, because we were talking about the yield being part of the tokens being distributed by the network for staking, and they have it set at 5% was kind of what that topic
Oh,
was.
okay. That's something different. I'm thinking you're talking about like delegation rewards, stuff like that, that you receive in Flare.
Well, that money obviously has to be created from somewhere once everything's distributed. So it's set to create 5%. Is that correct?
I don't know, because now I feel like we're talking about two different things. So,
We may be.
so yeah. I mean, we might be, and that's totally fine. But I think what you're talking about is more so geared towards the staking side of things, not like Flare's inflation, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
want
So
to make
how?
sure I understand that. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's towards the staking side of stuff. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes. Yeah. We were talking about two different things, but that's okay. That's okay. We're on the same page now.
I mean, that's not hard with such a complicated environment.
Right.
So, what do you think would need to happen for the Bitcoin community to want to join?
Dude, I don't know, man. A prayer.
Miracle.
Yeah, miracle. No, in all seriousness, I really don't know because same thing with the XRP community. It's full of intelligent people. So sometimes when you get a bunch of intelligent people in a room and they feel like they're all the genius and they're all right, it can be like pulling teeth to kind of get a conductive or productive, I'm sorry, conversation going. So when you kind of see the Bitcoin maxis talk on Twitter or X, it kind of discourages any type of communication from different communities because it's like Bitcoin or nothing. So I would like to find that pocket of Bitcoin investors or Bitcoin community people who aren't necessarily maxis, and they're willing to kind of learn about things outside of Bitcoin that they could leverage for their use as well.
I would say, when I look at it from like a business standpoint, because again, being a small business owner, it's proof of concept. The moment you have proof of concept out there and you see people showing videos and the communication's going out, okay, like if you do this, this, and this, you're going to earn this much Bitcoin, you're going to earn this and this. And as that continues to grow, that's going to be that FOMO where it'll start off kind of slow, but once that traction's there, like it'll move quickly. It'll be like a small snowball getting pushed down a giant hill, which will become an avalanche, but it's going to be a very slow start with people producing lots of content to show them you're missing out on this opportunity. Then you'll see more and more money move to that as the opportunities just become visible to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can't deny that the possibility that if this is like Hugo said, institutional ready, that this could be like institutions joining with Bitcoin. I don't know. I mean, for example, let's say that Google is deeply involved in the development of Flare, and whatever holdings they have in Bitcoin, they're like, okay, we're going to use this protocol. And maybe that's the leading force. I don't know. I still don't understand who's crypto's targeted for, to be honest. Like, I have a feeling that we are not really the end client, and whatever people like us think or not think is not really going to make the
Actually,
big
Hugo said it exactly what the goal of it was. He wants to create an environment where common people like us could easily put our money into TradFi possibilities. Like we was talking about how, nothing in the world moves out traditional finance. Well, there's only 10 banks that get to do that. So his goal is to open it up to everybody. Well, that's not just obviously us as retail, but that's other banks, right? There's only 10 banks that can move that money like that. But now other people can put it into these pools or these smart contracts to loan out the money, to leverage it, to get those returns. So in essence, we are that part as well, because Hugo specifically named that today in the conversation of one of his goals.
The fact that it's open for people like us does not mean that we are the target.
No, but it creates a level playing field. It really does create that level
100%.
playing field, right? And I always go back to that video from like 2021 of Crypto Siege. You want to go where your assets are treated best, and that is not just he didn't. Obviously his audience is retail. People like us or me, but I think that applies for those banks that are outside of that select group of 10 that can move money around or do whatever they need to do as freely as possible. Um, being able to enable regional banks or regional financial institutions to be able to operate in realms that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. They would have had to make all these hops to eventually get to one of those 10 banks that can move money as freely as they would like. Being able to, enable those smaller banks to offer better products, better services to their clientele would be huge too. And then, of course, that enables and empowers retail to, like I said, go where their assets are treated best. So we'll start, in my opinion, we'll start to see a lot of white label products that may use some of these blockchain technologies under the hood, but most people won't know that.
I think that that's how I see the future. Like for 99% of the population, this is going to be something that just works. Like they won't even know what they're using. So,
Yeah,
right, like,
let me throw in one thing there. So, I mean, you kind of hit on it, Anthony. The regional banks. One of the biggest problems I think, with the regional banks and even the 10 big banks he had mentioned was being able to accurately, what is the word? Accurately assess the risk of the loan, right? So, blockchain is going to really help regional banks accurately assess the risk of the loan and be able to really push more money into the market. So you're going to get a lot more money into markets because of that opening up to the smaller regional banks and people like us. Again, well, you're right. We probably aren't the main target, like you said, with the XRP ledger. It's pretty much all retail, and its volume is nothing compared to what it could be in the AMM pools, I should say specifically.
The other thing that it stuck to me, and I want to know if you guys understood it better. He was saying that for certain kinds of financial products, you need to do KYC and AML on each user. And then the way that he explained it, I need to watch it again, but he was explaining something that he was not breaking the law by doing it in this decentralized way. So did you understand? Like, did you get that part?
I did not get that part quite well. I know the part you're talking about, but yeah, I can't say that I caught that well.
So my guess, and this is I will need to listen to it again, but so when you, for example, Circle or XRP with real USD, when they mint the tokens, that's usually institutional investors that have a lot of money and they put like big bags, and they are completely KYC and AML, and all of those transactions are completely legal and under the law. But then when you buy a USDC, you're not buying, like, you don't have to do KYC at that point. So my guess is that it's something similar. It's in the way that you do the interaction between, I don't know. I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, I mean, not knowing in full detail what Hugo was, in what context Hugo was speaking of, I would think, the SKYC token from Centric Solutions would play quite well for any KYC type of requirement for financial institutions. So I don't know. There's that too.
Yeah, I'm interviewing Santiago on Thursday, so I would definitely want to have that conversation with him.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Let's come up with some questions for him.
Yeah, I got you.
All right. Any other thing, guys?
And again, this is the interesting thing. I like how they kind of pointed out, TEEs allowed GPU type leverage computing for the blockchain industry, which I think is something that is still very undervalued in a way.
Can you explain that, please?
Think of the scribe chain, right? All of that, so he is taking that data, right, recording it from our X space and recording it to a TEE that's only accessible on blockchain, right? Well, you can't necessarily, like we were talking about earlier, like storing data earlier, but Hugo's talked many times, like a small block on Bitcoin was like 10 million or something like that, or Solana, right? And then 2 million on another chain. Whereas now TEs, you know, I can't even think of his name right now. But you know, the scribe chain's holding tons of data from all the different scribes and different things that'll continue to build at no cost almost. Does that make sense? So now you're
So how does the GPU memory gets used compared to the CPU memory? And like what it's just like the GPU is like a transient memory, like it doesn't have to be stored, or what? How does it work?
Ooh, guys are getting super technical in the weeds there.
That's getting a little deep.
Well, I mean, the thing is that if he's saying that you're getting GPU performance, there has to be like a simple explanation of why would he say GPU performance? Like what, or processing? Like why? What does that mean? Like M5.
So the blockchain only produces so many blocks per minute or second, right? So it's limited right there. GPU can move faster than that, right? So it's giving you, Anthony, please jump in here if I'm screwing that part up. But you know, the GPU is going to process that speed so much faster. So you're going to process 10 times the data in a TEE that you would be able to process on chain.
Okay, so that's what he was saying, that storing memory on, like storing information on the blockchain was
so
very
much
expensive.
Yeah.
So by storing the memory on the TEEs,
you can process it like that faster than you can. Like I think, what he said, the fastest you'd like to get a blockchain code is 30 seconds. Any faster than that, you know, you probably don't want it. But the TEE allows you to do so much shit in that same 30-second time frame that you couldn't do on a chain.
Right. And I think Hugo said this on the spaces when they were explaining Flare 2.0. But one of the main things that TEEs, you know, will enable us to do is like risk model assessments. You can't do that directly on chain because of how large your data set would have to be to do a quality risk assessment, right? So you leveraging the TEE, you can have that data set stored in that environment, run your risk assessing model in the TEE, and be able to communicate back to the chain, right? Without having to run those operations directly on chain because it would cost too much. I mean, I think we would go bankrupt if we tried to process large data sets on chain. It's just not efficient and feasible.
TEE is like encrypted cloud that has very specific instructions of operation. Kind of like you're storing your data in the cloud somewhere, like in somebody's server or computer, and then what makes it enables it is the security of Flare, allows you to access that information in a secure way that nobody else could access. Is that correct?
Yep.
And it's primarily protocol driven. So if it's not written in the protocol, then it won't perform a function, right? So those protocols are what's directly accessing that TEE for whatever it needs, and only for what it needs. So that's another key piece in the security part.
So you could say
almost impossible hack it. It's almost impossible to hack at this point because you can't tell it to do something because it's only got one function. My job is only to sweep the floor to the right, whatever, right? Let's say I'm sweeping the floor. My one job is to sweep the floor to the right, and somebody else's job sweep the floor to the left, right? And so that TE can only do that one item. Like that's its job, or whatever is programmed in it to do. So you can't just go in and go, I want to get the data from it, so I'm going to tell it to do this, this, and this, and give me this, right? It's not code prompted, or, you know, it's built in to only do sweeping to the right. You can't tell it to do anything else.
So in essence, that the instructions could be either send back to this address, or if there's a breach in security, send to this custodian.
And that's all it'll do.
That's the only two options. So if anybody tries to send to a different address, then it would send to the custodian until that's what it means. No, like that's the limited program.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah,
a very basic
to keep it simple.
Basically good. Yes.
Yeah, because that's what I understand that the core bolt and then the PMWs will have, is that if you are in the agent's core bolt, then that core vault, it only has two options: either send back to the agent or send to the custodial if there's any security breach. So
Correct.
then that's what creates the security with for Flare 2.0. It's very interesting, very, very interesting.
And yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so I wanted to make sure I had this right. So I had to do a quick Google search. So CPUs are more so for like general purpose tasks. So like everyday stuff. I want to web browse, internet browse, this, that, and the third. Very simple, straightforward tasks. GPUs are more so for like those parallel, more resource intensive tasks, which is why you see a lot of GPUs used for gaming. There's multiple processes going on in that. Yes, some CPU or a CPU may have something to do with that level of processing, but most of the heavy lifting is done by the GPU in that, for that example. So it really depends on what your purpose is for that TEE. If it's a very simple task, then CPU resources could be used. If it's a very complex task, which is what a lot of AI computing type models and in things like of that nature, they use GPUs because you can execute multiple tasks in parallel, not in sequential order.
So I guess what Hugo meant is that it allows that capacity of processing data on the blockchain. Like, just to have the analogy of what GPU processing data can do, but on the blockchain. And that's what we were talking, that it's not stored on the blockchain, it's stored in a server. This is amazing.
Oh, yeah, and that TE enclave, yes. I mean, we all use them today. Maybe not you, Whale, because you don't like
oh, but he doesn't have
right. That's
face.
what I was saying. That's what I was saying. You don't like Face ID, but just using that as an example, if you're
Fingerprint ID
using an
stuff.
iPhone, you're using a TE right now. The way
Well,
that
I use my
biometric,
fingerprint. I use my fingerprint on my phone, and that's a TE as well.
right,
Yep.
right. Okay, then. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That biometric data is saved in its own little section on that motherboard or piece of hardware that's within that TE. That TE is completely off on its own within that technology. And every time you make a call or you try and not make a call. Now I'm speaking in developer terms. Every time you try to unlock your device, whether it's your thumb or fingerprint, whatever, or your face or your irises, it's making a call out to that TE saying, hey, does this data that I'm collecting right now match what is saved in that TE? If it doesn't, don't unlock your phone. If it does, lock the phone.
Yeah. So what I understand from Oxyflow is that, hey, Mr. Dr. XRP, go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing, guys?
I'm good.
Yeah,
What's
great
up?
conversation. Great conversation. I think Blair also has partnered up with Turnkey.
Oh yes.
Yes.
So
I'm
I think
booking a conversation with them soon.
So I think they are more into, or they would be more interested in using TEEs because they are like, I don't know how to explain it, but they're into secure, flexible, and scalable key management where they deal with biometrics and face ID and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So I asked ChatGPT if TEs would be suitable for Turnkey, and it, it says yes, it is very, very suitable because Turnkey uses AWS Nitro, I don't know what it's called, AWS something, which is expensive for them. But if they would use the Flare protocol with the TEs, would be much cheaper and scalable and decentralized. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
So what I understand from Oxenflow is that he uses a TEE where half of the keys are in your account and the other half are encrypted on your device on a TEE.
Device.
So what I understand
Yeah.
is that Turnkey, it's a similar process. So I'm actually booking a call for them with them in a couple of weeks. So we'll have more information on that pretty soon.
Booked and busy.
Cool.
A good
Yeah.
place to be. Awesome. No, I love the conversation, first of all. But I think ultimately we're really starting to see this technology evolve. And it'll be really interesting to see what use cases are enabled once these things are available. I mean, I'm not a developer by trade. I'm just developer by association, I guess you could say.
Obvious.
So, I spent this week, or you guys know, well, Stephen, you guys know, I spent this weekend, or at least my Sunday, hacking away at the Flare AI kit, and it just really started making me think. Like, I don't think anybody's really, and maybe they are, but I don't think anybody is really doing this much groundbreaking development like I see the Flare team doing. Being, because I was explaining to the guys at my job about, aggregating responses from multiple, LLMs. And they were like, what? Why not just use one? Why does it matter? Why not just ask one individually? And it's like, once I start explaining the Flare AI kit and how it can aggregate multiple responses from multiple different LLMs and then bring it into a single response, I mean, people outside of blockchain are like, dude, I've been looking for something like this. Like, I didn't know that you could do this. How do I get started? So this type of innovation is not just getting the gears turning for people who would be considered crypto native, but people outside of crypto, people outside of blockchain are essentially looking for things that the Flare team is solving for. So, man, who knows? Who knows what things could be like in the next year or two?
Do you think there's a way to monetize like the machine learning? So the thought came like this. I was thinking that it would be great to have an AI editor that I could upload all of my whale videos, like drone videos, and then get all the interesting parts cut out. So then instead of having 50 hours of content, I would have 5 hours, for example. And I was
Right.
like, well, yeah, but then at the same time, I'm giving away my content and I'm training an AI model, which in certain sense could be used for some kind of research, which would be amazing. But at the same time, my content could become irrelevant because now AI has 20 hours of great quality content to learn from. So I was like, okay, what if there's a way to monetize that machine learning? That could be an interesting thing. If you could come up with something unique and you're like training that you could get paid for, that would be super interesting thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's all possible. I don't see there being anything in the realm of impossible at this point.
I got a
Someone
question
just has
for
to.
you, Ace.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
So,
ahead.
I mean, you just kind of built an LM for fun on the side in a Sunday, and one of the biggest problems we look at, as we've kind of talked about several things we're doing, is pulling the P&L. So could you not, with the AI cloud, build in a very nice way to pull that data specifically, like, because it's all on chain, right? It should be all
Right.
trackable. Like, oh, this got bought at this price and then got moved over here. Now here's this, and this. Is that a difficult build or an easy build? Like, I mean, just going into the projects we're working on, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So, I mean, just for clarification, I didn't build an LLM. I am leveraging current,
Right.
existing LLMs.
Yeah. I get. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I don't see why that would be a difficult thing to develop for. It's just pulling different data points and displaying it to the user in a very easy to read way.
Well, my thought was, taking the data, dropping it in the LLM, and having it give you the data to be reported somewhere else. Then you could use the three to get a consensus of, is that was it accurate, blah, blah, and then sending it to the user. But
yeah,
again, not my area. Just curious.
all of that is possible. I'm here to tell you it's all possible. It just takes the right person to be able to make it happen. It's all possible.
That would be an interesting solution for the P&L issue we have. Lots of people have, actually, because nobody knows.
Yeah, most definitely.
Nobody has to see what they're making.
I've always thought that the possibility of making a business and leveraging this technology is much greater than just buying and holding and waiting for price appreciation, because I mean, you're using all of this tech and you're not really paying any infrastructure.
Right.
Like a few years ago, how much money you would need to have in hardware to be able to do this exploration that you did this weekend. It's insane.
I mean, thousands of dollars. I'm gonna be honest with you.
For sure.
Thousands of dollars. You know, even when you look at, and this is why I applaud the Flare team for hooking up the hackathon winners with, you know, grant on the Flare side, so fast tracking them through that, and then also getting them hooked up with Google credits to be able to spend and, you know, pay for maintaining the infrastructure, because that is a costly piece of development. You know, people complain about the what is that? The data providers, you know, selling portions of the Flare that they earn. Well, they have to keep the lights on. How do you expect someone to keep the lights on if they don't have any, if they're not making any money, if they're not selling anything? Now, obviously there's a threshold and, you know, responsibilities, stuff like that to the network. But at the end of the day, man, if we want to see this network be successful and we want to attract others, then we have to be able to build and maintain infrastructure. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, this comes back to what Steven was saying. It's just that the growth of the network has to be greater than the sell pressure for maintaining. But it's the same thing with Bitcoin. I mean, people that say about Ripple selling XRP, it's like, dude, every time you do a transaction, every single miner has to sell Bitcoin to pay their expenses. Is exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same Coke, it's the same Pepsi, just a different bottle.
Right.
All right, guys. I think that conversation was great. We should have some shorts, both from the video and from this. And it was good to see you. And then
Yeah,
I'll
it was
send you the
good talking to
information
you
about
guys.
the conversation with Santiago if you want to join, or if you want to send some questions. And yeah,
awesome. And it's hilarious that Google is doxing me right now, but it is what it is, man.
I thought about it. Yeah.
Hey, man, it is what it is. But yeah, we'll have to link up and have this conversation again. I really like having conversations with the community, so this was awesome. It was good insight.
All right. Take care, guys. Until next time. Bye, Sarah.
Take care.